This is Scott the Fix-It Guy. Today we're dealing with a Maytag gas dryer that is no longer heating. This is a 23-year-old machine, but very well made, and this will be an easy procedure. We just need to figure out which component is having trouble. So we're opening up the inspection door and then looking to see if we can see the igniter glowing when it's supposed to be running. So it's spinning fine, but no glow. And that could mean that the igniter is bad, or it could mean that the high limit or thermal fuse has popped. So we're going to remove two screws here, Phillips head screws from the bottom, and then we're going to pull the front panel out toward us. The bottom part comes out, and then the top clips can come loose. You have to pull it out about 45 degrees. We're just going to set it off to the side. I've already unplugged it. We're going to do a continuity test now with our continuity tester. And we're checking first the thermal fuse here on the far left. And it shows good continuity. And then we're checking the outside leads of the thermostat, and it shows good continuity. So we know those two are not the culprit. We're doing the high limit here on the burn tube, and it shows good continuity. So all those check out. So there's a good chance that the igniter, after all those years, has finally given up. So I undid the igniter modular connection. I'm going to put my multi-tester into the female side, and I'm going to be looking for 120 volts AC. So I set my meter for voltage, and then I have to plug the machine back in, and I have the door closed. Even though the front panel is off, the door switch will still work, and I have the door closed. I have the timer set for heat, so I'm going to turn it on and see what kind of voltage I get. Yeah, so 122 volts is going to the igniter, but the igniter is not glowing, and that tells us that the igniter is faulty, and we just have to replace it, which is pretty easy. So I disconnected the multi-tester. Now I'm just going to take a 1/4 inch driver to undo the 1/4 inch bolt that holds on the igniter. Pretty easy. The igniter comes right off. So looking at this igniter, you can see a burn mark, and also you can look, if you look very carefully, you can see on the left-hand side where the metal's kind of broken. Here's the brand new one right next to it. So it's probably lasted those 23 years, and now it's just time for a new igniter. Igniters usually go well beyond a decade, so when you have no heat, it's often not the igniter, it's often the thermal fuse because of a vent tube that's blocked. But in this case, it was the igniter. So we're putting the 1/4 inch bolt back in, 1/4 inch screw, putting the modular connector back together. While we have the machine open, we're going to be replacing the primary and secondary gas coils because they can contribute to a dryer that doesn't heat well. When they get worn out, they don't open up the gas valve for very long, and the flame is not able to stay lit, and it doesn't produce much heat. So again, since we already have the machine open, these parts are pretty cheap. We're going to be replacing these two gas coils. Pretty easy to do. So I'm using a Phillips head screwdriver to remove a bracket that holds both of the coils in position. Spin those off. I've already pulled off the modular connectors. Now I lift up the bracket. Here's the part number. This is Electrolux or Frigidaire part. These are generic. These are ones that are used on many machines, many different brands. So I'm replacing them one by one. So the skinny one, you want to have the terminals on the top, and the fatter one here, you want the terminals to be on the bottom when you put them back in. And they just slide right on. Sometimes with the bigger one, there's also a small metal sleeve that will fit on there. So take a good look. Make sure that that old metal sleeve didn't come off on the old coil. If it did, you can just pop it out and put it on the new coil. So now we're going to put the bracket back on. So we've got the bracket back on, and then we just need to put in the 2 Phillips head screws. I got to make sure these little plastic indexing points on the coils line up with the little holes in the bracket. And then once I got that, I can put the 2 Phillips head screws back in. So these little coils only want to go in one way into the bracket, and you can just turn them a little bit until they click into position. Put in these 2 Phillips head screws. These coils are essentially just electromagnets. They're just copper windings. When they given 110, 120 volts, they create a powerful magnetic field, and that's part of what allows the gas to flow into the dryer, into the burner tube where it's ignited. So we got that in tight. We're going to put the 2 modular connectors back on. Just take your time, wiggle them on. Make sure they go all the way in as far as they can go, and they should click into position. There we go. So we got the 2 of those. Sure, I take my flashlight. Okay, I'm going to test it now. I'll plug it back in. Turn it on, and let's see if we get good ignition. So we're going to look at the burner tube. Should start to glow orange. There we go. And then when it gets hot enough, it'll let the gas flow in, it'll ignite it, and you'll get a big flame. It's getting pretty hot. There's the flame. So that looks great. Okay, so we're going to unplug it, and we'll go ahead and finish putting it together. So I'm going to put the front panel back in. I'm going to push it in at 45 degrees initially so the clips will push up into the frame to hold them, and then I just let it hinge down to where the front panel is straight up and down, and then I'll put in the 2 Phillips head screws to hold it. Really easy to do. These old Maytag dryers are great. They're really tough, last a long time. I've seen some that have been going for over 30 years. You have to replace little components like we did today, but really well-made dryers. Spin those on, plug it back in. I'm just going to test it one more time. And we turned it on, and now we're going to look in the inspection door. We'll see it ignite. And ideally, we want the flame to go for maybe 2.5 to 3 minutes. Would be a really good long burn time. So we're just waiting for the flame to start. Okay, there's our flame. And we're going to check the watch, get a setting, and then we can hear or see when the flame goes out, and then we'll look, and hopefully that'll be between 2 to 3 minutes. If it's less, it could be the vent tube is obstructed. So this went out at about 2.5 minutes. We did a little time lapse there, but that's great. So we have a dryer working great again. And thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe when you get a chance.